are offering up a lot more traction than your fronts, and it might feel like it's pushing. And so you hand your controller off to somebody else and say, this car feels like it's pushing. And they like to drive their car harder. So they're going to drive the fronts to this limit and drive the rears to about that limit. And they're going to say, you know what? Your car's pretty well balanced. I'm getting about the same amount of traction out of the front and the back. So then you hand it off to the third person who really likes to push their car. And they're going to get the rear tires all the way down here where they're sliding, and the front tires down to here.
So that'd be Scott.
And now they're going to notice the front tires are giving you more traction than the rear. So this guy, man, how do you drive this thing? It's loose. And so the point of that is that you have to tune for yourself in terms of what side of the edge of traction you're comfortable with. And so what I normally do is I try to find somebody who has a driving style that's similar to mine, or at least whose car setup suits me. Like when I was driving an X-Ray last year, I tried just about every team driver setup, and I landed on Barry Baker as being somebody's setup that I could drive. I could pretty much take it to any track, drop it down, and it was pretty close. And this year I find with running the Cyclone, Andy Moore's setup is pretty close to what I'm comfortable with. So you kind of have to find somebody who's got a fairly well-balanced car. Because the pros, they don't really have the discrepancy in their cars. They spend a lot of time to try and make sure that their car is as balanced as possible. So the discrepancy in the amount of traction that the front and rear tires will give you is very small. So they can overdrive the car and still be fairly close to the edge of traction, or underdrive it if they need it, and still keep a fairly reasonable line. The other place where this comes in play is when traction comes up. So when traction comes up and you don't have a very well balanced car, you're going to see these kind of things happen, where all of a sudden it's either going to be loose or it's going to get really tight as traction changes, whereas a balanced car will have you more consistent as traction change. So in terms of being able to sense where the traction limit is, and kind of knowing this and feeling, well, I'm overdriving the car. When somebody else gives me a car to try, I kind of try all three of these positions. I try to underdrive the car under various parts of the track to see how it feels. And I try to overdrive it, and I try and do something in the middle. And that'll tell me what the balance of the car is like. And it's also important to note where you're trying to solve a handling problem. So looking at either corner entry, mid-corner, or corner exit. Instead of just saying my car oversteers, chances are that it's okay on some parts of the track. So if you're trying to solve a chronic oversteer, you'll probably make it worse on the parts where the car's actually handling well. And it's also important to note whether it's on the fast sections or slow sections of the track where you have a problem. So you could almost draw the entire track out on a piece of paper and jot down the areas where you think you're having a problem. Chances are those are common areas, like, for example, a deceleration zone or an acceleration zone or a fast switchback, because those will have different changes. For example, like in a fast switchback, if you want to stabilize the car, you would normally reduce some of the rear droop so the back end doesn't sway as far, more reactive in a fast section. That same setting in a slow switchback or a slow hairpin will destabilize the rear end. So it's important to note some of those factors when you're looking for where the car is handling well and where it isn't handling well. And so we'll look at a couple of the others here. Factors when you're looking for what's happening with the car is one thing I look for is how twitchy is it, especially off-center. Because you'll want the car to be fairly smooth off-center on large flowing tracks, and you'll want it to be fairly twitchy when you have fast S sections, so that you have the maximum amount of response coming through those areas. also look for body roll in terms of how does the car handle once I initiate my corner. Does it actually carve into the corner, or does it stay pretty flat? Because that normally determines how much apex corner you have versus more of a circular path around the corner itself. So we'll look at those next time. What are some of the different tuning options and cures you might have for some of the problem areas that kind of listed today. That's pretty much all I have. Any questions?
Well, good. Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. Speak.